In the dense forests of occupied Poland, approximately 100 kilometers northeast of Warsaw, a site of unimaginable horror emerged during World War II. Treblinka, initially established as a forced labor camp in 1941, would undergo a chilling transformation that would forever scar the pages of human history. The camp's evolution from a place of grueling work to a factory of death exemplifies the darkest depths of Nazi brutality and the systematic annihilation of European Jewry. In its early days, Treblinka I served as a forced labor camp, primarily housing Jewish and Polish prisoners. Established in November 1941 under the command of Theodor van Eupen, the camp was situated near a gravel pit and operated under the supervision of the SS. Prisoners toiled under harsh conditions, extracting gravel for the German war effort and working on irrigation projects along the nearby Bug River. As survivor Hershl Sperling later recounted, "We worked until our hands bled, and still they demanded more." The camp's original purpose, while cruel, was not yet the efficient killing machine it would become. Prisoners lived in primitive barracks, battling starvation, disease, and brutal treatment from guards. One prisoner, Hershl Cymlich, recalled how they would secretly collect potato peels from the guards' quarters to supplement their meager rations. The turning point came in 1942 with the implementation of Operation Reinhard, the Nazi plan to exterminate Polish Jews. Named after Reinhard Heydrich, the plan's architect who was assassinated by Czech resistance fighters on May 27, 1942, this operation marked a sinister escalation in the Holocaust. Treblinka, along with Belzec and Sobibor, was chosen as one of the key extermination camps for this genocidal endeavor. The decision to include Treblinka was made by Odilo Globoknik, the SS and police leader of the Lublin district, who saw the camp's isolated location and proximity to rail lines as ideal for mass extermination. In July 1942, construction began on Treblinka II, the extermination camp, just 1.5 kilometers from the labor camp. The new camp was designed with a singular, horrifying purpose: mass murder on an industrial scale. SS Obersturmführer Richard Tomala oversaw the construction, implementing lessons learned from the operations at Belzec to create an even more efficient killing center. Interestingly, Tomala would later be executed by Soviet forces in 1945, a fate shared by many of those involved in the camp's operations. The layout of Treblinka II was meticulously planned to facilitate rapid extermination. Upon arrival, victims were led through a deceptive tube, Schlauch, a narrow fenced path leading to gas chambers disguised as showers. This path was cynically referred to as Himmelstrasse, or Road to Heaven, by the SS. The camp was divided into three main areas: the reception area, the living area for SS and Ukrainian guards, and the extermination area, chillingly referred to as the Upper Camp by the Nazis. Franz Stangl, who became the camp commandant in September 1942, described the camp's efficiency. Treblinka was a primitive but effective production line of death. Belzec was a laboratory. Treblinka was a factory. The scale of murder at Treblinka was staggering. From July 23, 1942 to August 19, 1943, approximately 870,000 Jews were killed at Treblinka II, making it the second deadliest extermination camp after Auschwitz-Birkenau. At its peak, the camp could process 12,000 to 15,000 victims per day. To put this in perspective, more people were killed at Treblinka in a typical day than the total number of British and American soldiers who died on D-Day. As Holocaust historian Raoul Hilberg noted, the operation of the death camps was the most lethal achievement of the Nazi regime. The victims came from various ghettos and regions, including Warsaw, Radom, Częstochowa, Kielce, and even as far as Thessaloniki in Greece. Among the victims was Janusz Korczak, the renowned Polish Jewish educator and children's author, who refused offers of sanctuary to accompany the children from his orphanage to Treblinka on August 5, 1942. Treblinka's transformation from labor camp to death camp was emblematic of the Nazi regime's broader shift towards the final solution: The camp's evolution reflected the increasing radicalization of Nazi policy and the industrialization of mass murder. What began as a site of forced labor became a place where human life was extinguished with ruthless efficiency. Heinrich Himmler, one of the chief architects of the Holocaust, visited Treblinka in early 1943 and reportedly praised its effectiveness, stating, "The Jews are being exterminated as per the Führer's orders." The assembly line of annihilation, Treblinka's deadly efficiency. In the shadows of Nazi-occupied Europe, a meticulously orchestrated system of death unfolded at Treblinka. This extermination camp, hidden in the forests of Poland, became a chilling testament to the industrial-scale murder of the Holocaust. From the moment of transport to the final disposal of bodies, every step was designed with a single, horrifying purpose: the swift and efficient elimination of human life. The journey to Treblinka began in the crowded ghettos of occupied Europe. Warsaw, the largest Jewish ghetto in Nazi-controlled territory, became a primary source of victims. On July 22, 1942, the Nazis began the Aktion Warsaw, a mass deportation that would send over 250,000 Jews to Treblinka in just 2 months. Chaim Kaplan, a teacher in the Warsaw ghetto, wrote in his diary on that fateful day, "The die is cast. We are faced with total destruction." The deportations were overseen by SS Sturmbannführer Hermann Höfl, who would later play a key role in Operation Reinhard, the Nazi plan for the extermination of Polish Jews. To facilitate this mass transport, the Nazis employed a web of deception. Victims were told they were being resettled in the East, a cruel lie designed to maintain order and minimize resistance. At the Umschlagplatz, the departure point in Warsaw, signs proclaimed Umsiedlung, resettlement. Jews were even forced to pay for their own train tickets, a final indignity before their fatal journey. As survivor Samuel Willenberg later recalled, "We believed we were going to Ukrainian farms. We had no idea." The Nazis went so far as to issue postcards to some deportees, forcing them to write to their relatives about good conditions in the resettlement areas. These postcards, dated weeks in the future, would be sent after the victims had already been murdered. The trains that carried these unfortunate souls to Treblinka were overcrowded cattle cars, with up to 200 people crammed into spaces designed for 50. Many died during the journey from suffocation, dehydration, or sheer despair. When the trains finally screeched to a halt at Treblinka, survivors emerged into a world of calculated chaos. The infamous Treblinka song, a cynical march composed by SS Guard Kurt Hubert Franz, was sometimes played as new arrivals were led to their deaths. Its lyrics, "We know only the word of our commander. We know only obedience and duty. We want to serve, to go on serving until little bit of luck ends it all. Hooray!" encapsulate the twisted mentality of the camp's operators. Primo Levi, an Auschwitz survivor, captured the horror of these transports in his book, If This Is a Man. Imagine now, a man who is deprived of everyone he loves, and at the same time of his house, his habits, his clothes, in short, of everything he possesses. He will be a hollow man, reduced to suffering and needs, forgetful of dignity and restraint, for he who loses all often easily loses himself. The arrival process at Treblinka was designed to disorient and control. As victims stumbled onto the platform, they were immediately confronted by shouting SS officers and Ukrainian guards, many of whom were drunk to dull their senses to the atrocities they were committing. Men were separated from women and children, families torn apart in moments. SS Oberscharführer Kurt Franz, known as Doll due to his youthful appearance, often stood on the platform with his dog Barry, ready to attack any who resisted. Franz was notorious for his cruelty, often using his whip on arrivals and setting his dog on prisoners for entertainment. Victims were forced to surrender all personal belongings, told they would be returned after delousing. This included everything from suitcases to wedding rings. As Jankiel Wiernik, a Jewish prisoner who survived Treblinka, later testified, "The ground is covered with banknotes, coins, diamonds, gold, and other valuables. All this is collected by the Reds, Jewish workers, and then loaded onto trucks. The scale of this theft was enormous. It's estimated that the value of goods stolen from victims at Treblinka alone amounted to hundreds of millions of Reichsmarks. The Nazis even established a separate area, cynically called the Lazarette, field hospital, where elderly or infirm arrivals were taken directly to be shot, their bodies thrown into a perpetually burning pit. The next stage in this process of dehumanization was the cleansing. Victims were told they needed to shower for hygiene purposes before resettlement. This lie was reinforced by the camp's elaborate facade, which included a fake train station complete with a clock painted on wood, timetables, and even a ticket window. The path to the gas chambers was cynically named the Himmelstrasse, or Road to Heaven, by the SS. To maintain the illusion, the Nazis even installed a Star of David over the entrance to the gas chambers. As Treblinka survivor Kalman Teigman recalled, "We were dehumanized, we were robots, we were driven like animals to the slaughter." Initially, there were 3 gas chambers, each measuring 4x4 meters and capable of killing 300 people at once. However, these proved insufficient for the scale of murder planned. In August and September 1942, under the direction of Erwin Lambert, an SS officer experienced in constructing gas chambers, 10 larger chambers were built. Each new chamber could hold 400 people, dramatically increasing the camp's ability to carry out mass murder. Lambert, known as the master builder of the SS, had previously constructed gas chambers at other extermination camps and would later be sentenced to life imprisonment for his crimes. The method of killing evolved as well. Initially, a diesel engine was used to produce carbon monoxide, but this was later replaced with a gasoline engine for greater efficiency. The man responsible for operating these engines was Ivan Marchenko, known as Ivan the Terrible, whose brutality became legendary among survivors. SS Unterscharführer August Miete, nicknamed the Angel of Death by prisoners, was in charge of operating these gas chambers. Miete was known for his cruelty and would often personally shoot prisoners who were too weak to walk to the gas chambers. In a chilling testament to the banality of evil, Miete would later claim during his trial, "I was only following orders." The actual gassing process took about 30 minutes, but the disposal of bodies became a significant challenge. Initially, bodies were buried in massive pits. However, as the number of victims grew and concerns about evidence arose, the Nazis began burning corpses on large grates made of railway tracks. This change was implemented following a visit by SS Chief Heinrich Himmler in early 1943, who was concerned about the possibility of Allied discovery of mass graves. This grim work fell to the Sonderkommando, Jewish prisoners forced to operate the death machinery of Treblinka. These men, knowing they too were marked for death, worked under unimaginable conditions. They sorted through the belongings of the dead, dragged bodies from the gas chambers, extracted gold teeth, and operated the crematoria. As Richard Glazar, a Czech Jew who survived as part of the Sonderkommando, wrote, "We were drenched in blood. From morning until night we crawled through mountains of corpses." The psychological toll on these prisoners was immense. Many turned to alcohol, which the SS provided, to numb themselves to the horror of their tasks. The life expectancy of a Sonderkommando member was brutally short, usually only a few months. The Nazis regularly liquidated these workers to eliminate witnesses, replacing them with new arrivals. In a cruel twist, some Sonderkommando members found themselves processing the bodies of their own family members. One such prisoner, Yakov Silberberg, described finding his wife's body among the victims. "I recognized her by the clothes she was wearing. I felt like I couldn't go on in that moment." The efficiency of Treblinka's killing process was a source of perverse pride for its SS operators. Camp Commandant Franz Stangl later stated in an interview, "Treblinka was a primitive but effective production line of death." This industrial approach to genocide reached its zenith in the summer of 1942, when Treblinka received trainloads of victims from as far away as Grodno, Kielce, Radom, and even Thessaloniki in Greece. The camp's effectiveness was such that on some days, more people were murdered at Treblinka than at Auschwitz-Birkenau, despite the latter's larger size and notoriety. Flames of defiance, the Treblinka Uprising, a testament to human resilience. In the sweltering heat of August 2, 1943, the air in Treblinka extermination camp crackled with tension. For over a year, this Nazi death factory had operated with ruthless efficiency, claiming the lives of nearly 900,000 Jews. But on this day, the machinery of genocide would grind to a halt as the prisoners, those marked for death, rose up against their tormentors in a desperate bid for freedom and dignity. As Elie Wiesel, Holocaust survivor and Nobel laureate, once said, "There may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest." The seeds of rebellion had been sown months earlier in the darkest depths of winter. As the bodies piled up and the crematoria worked overtime, a small group of prisoners began to whisper of resistance. Among them was Zelo Bloch, a Jewish soldier who had served in the Czechoslovak army. Bloch, along with others like Julian Korozicki, a physician from Warsaw, and Marceli Galewski, a former Polish army officer, formed the nucleus of a clandestine resistance movement. They were joined by Jankiel Wiernik, a carpenter who would later provide one of the most detailed accounts of life and death in Treblinka. Wiernik's testimony, A Year in Treblinka, became a crucial document in understanding the horrors of the camp. Their task seemed impossible. Treblinka was a fortress of death, guarded by SS men like Kurt Franz, nicknamed Doll, and Ukrainian auxiliaries armed to the teeth. The prisoners, weakened by starvation and brutality, had little more than their bare hands and burning desire for vengeance. Yet, as survivor Richard Glazar later recalled, "We knew we were going to die anyway. We wanted to choose the way we died." Over the following months, the conspirators worked in utmost secrecy. They began to stockpile weapons, pilfering tools from the sorting sheds and workshops. A duplicate key to the camp's armory was crafted by a prisoner named Eugeniusz Turovsky, who worked in the locksmith's shop. Gasoline was siphoned off in small amounts from vehicles and generators. Even as they went about their grim daily tasks, sorting the belongings of the dead, dragging corpses to mass graves, the rebels were preparing for their moment. One prisoner, Oskar Stroczynski, later described how they would test the camp's defenses by deliberately setting small fires, observing how the guards reacted. By summer, the plan was set. The uprising would begin in the afternoon, when the camp's routine was at its most predictable. The first signal would be a rifle shot, followed by a grenade thrown into the SS guardhouse. In the ensuing chaos, prisoners would set fire to camp buildings, cut telephone lines, and make a mass break for the forests beyond the camp's perimeter. The date was chosen carefully. August 2nd was a Monday, typically a day when fewer transports arrived, meaning fewer new victims to complicate the escape. As August 2nd dawned, an oppressive heat settled over Treblinka. At 3:45 p.m., a single gunshot rang out. In an instant, the carefully maintained order of the death camp exploded into mayhem. Stanislaw Kohn, one of the rebel leaders, hurled a grenade into the German mess hall. Flames erupted from the camp's fuel depot, sending plumes of black smoke into the sky. The fire quickly spread to the sorting barracks, where the belongings of murdered Jews were stored, a grim treasure trove of shoes, clothes, and personal effects that would now be consumed by the flames of rebellion. The SS guards, caught off guard, scrambled to respond. But the prisoners, driven by a mixture of desperation and long-suppressed rage, fought with a ferocity that stunned their oppressors. Armed with stolen rifles, axes, and even bare fists, they overwhelmed guard posts and watchtowers. One prisoner, Berek Leicher, managed to seize a machine gun and turned it on the guards, providing crucial covering fire for his escaping comrades. Amidst the chaos, extraordinary acts of courage unfolded. Yechiel Reichman, a 52-year-old rabbi from Prostin, led a group of prisoners in storming the camp's armory. Though Reichman fell in the assault, his comrades managed to seize a cache of weapons, turning them against the guards. In a poignant twist of fate, some of these weapons had likely been confiscated from Jewish victims upon their arrival at Treblinka. Now, in the hands of the rebels, they became instruments of justice and survival. As fires spread and gunfire echoed across the camp, hundreds of prisoners made a dash for freedom. They cut through barbed wire fences and fled into the surrounding forests. Among them was Samuel Willenberg, who later described the scene. "I ran like lightning through the gate. I didn't look right or left. I didn't feel the bullets whistling past my ears." Willenberg, one of the youngest survivors at 19, would go on to become an artist and sculptor, creating powerful works that memorialized the victims and heroes of Treblinka. The Nazi response was swift and brutal. SS reinforcements were called in from nearby outposts, including the training camp at Treblinka, where collaborators were trained to assist in the Holocaust. They pursued the escapees with dogs and vehicles, combing the forests and fields. Many fugitives were gunned down or captured in the immediate aftermath. Local Polish villagers, some motivated by anti-Semitism, others by fear of Nazi reprisals, aided in the manhunt. However, there were also instances of bravery among local Poles. The Krysiak family, for example, sheltered escapee Shlomo Hellman for 20 months, risking their lives to save his. Of the approximately 700 prisoners who participated in the uprising, only about 300 initially managed to escape the camp perimeter. Over the following days and weeks, most were either recaptured or killed. Some, driven to despair, took their own lives rather than face recapture. Abraham Bomber, who escaped during the uprising, later recounted how he and a group of fellow fugitives were forced to split up in the forest. "We said goodbye to each other," he recalled, knowing that most of us would not survive. Yet against all odds, a handful survived. By the war's end, around 70 Treblinka survivors remained to bear witness to both the horrors they had endured and the courage of those who had risen up against their tormentors. One such survivor, Kalman Teigman, later reflected, "To live, you had to have luck, a lot of luck, and I had luck." Teigman's words echo the sentiment of Primo Levi, another Holocaust survivor who wrote, "We who survived the camps are not true witnesses. The true witnesses, those in possession of the unspeakable truth, are the drowned, the dead, the disappeared." The impact of the Treblinka Uprising reverberated far beyond the camp's electrified fences. Though the revolt was ultimately crushed, it had succeeded in severely disrupting the camp's operations. More importantly, it had shattered the myth of Jewish passivity in the face of Nazi genocide. The rebellion at Treblinka became a symbol of Jewish resistance, challenging the narrative that victims of the Holocaust went, like sheep, to the slaughter. As historian Yehuda Bauer noted, the number of Jews who resisted and fought against the Nazis is astounding, given the conditions under which such resistance and fight took place. Action 1005. Treblinka's Hidden Holocaust. As the autumn leaves began to fall in 1943, a sinister operation was underway in the dense forests of eastern Poland, approximately 100 kilometers northeast of Warsaw. The Nazi death machine, which had claimed nearly 900,000 lives at Treblinka Extermination camp, was now desperately trying to erase all evidence of its monstrous crimes. The air, once thick with the acrid smoke of burning bodies, now carried the scent of freshly turned earth and newly planted crops. This was the beginning of Aktion 1005, the Nazis' attempt to obliterate the physical traces of their genocidal campaign. The decision to dismantle Treblinka came in the wake of the prisoner uprising on August 2, 1943. With the Soviet Red Army advancing from the east and the growing fear of their atrocities being exposed, Heinrich Himmler, the architect of the final solution, ordered the complete destruction of the camp on July 19, 1943. SS Obersturmführer Kurt Franz, the last commandant of Treblinka, was tasked with overseeing this grim work. Under Franz's supervision, the gas chambers that had claimed so many lives were dynamited. These chambers, disguised as shower rooms, could kill up to 5,000 people in just 2 hours using carbon monoxide from diesel engines. The crematoria, where countless bodies had been reduced to ash, were dismantled brick by brick. Buildings were torn down, and all machinery associated with the killing process was removed or destroyed. The narrow-gauge railway that had brought so many victims to their death was uprooted. As survivor Samuel Willenberg later recounted, they were in a great hurry to destroy the evidence, to remove all traces of the crime. Willenberg, one of only about 70 known survivors of Treblinka, would later create bronze sculptures depicting scenes from the camp, ensuring that what the Nazis sought to erase would be remembered in art. But the Nazis' efforts to conceal their crimes went beyond mere destruction. In a twisted attempt at camouflage, they embarked on a macabre landscaping project. The area where the gas chambers once stood was leveled and ploughed. Lupins and other crops were planted over the site of mass murder, their roots reaching into soil enriched by human ash. Trees were strategically placed to obscure the camp's former layout. As if to complete this grotesque transformation, a Ukrainian collaborator named Strebel was installed as a farmer, his presence intended to lend an air of normalcy to this place of unimaginable horror. This echoed similar efforts at other death camps, such as Belzec, where SS Scharführer Heinrich Gley oversaw the planting of firs and wild pines to hide mass graves. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of this cover-up was the treatment of the victims' remains. Sonderkommando 1005, a unit specifically created for this purpose, was brought in to exhume the bodies from the mass graves. This unit, led by SS Standartenführer Paul Blobel, had been tasked with eliminating evidence of mass killings across Eastern Europe. Using excavators and their bare hands, they dug up decomposing corpses and burned them on massive pyres fueled by railroad ties. The ash and bone fragments that remained were crushed and scattered in the surrounding forests or ploughed back into the earth. This grim work was often carried out by Jewish prisoners who were themselves killed once the task was complete, a final act of erasure in this campaign of concealment. This gruesome work continued day and night. SS-man Franz Suchemel, who would later testify at the Treblinka trials in 1965, described the scene. The whole of Treblinka stank. The stench was indescribable. If you stayed there for a while, you had the smell in your nose for weeks. Suchemel's testimony, along with that of other SS men like Kurt Franz and Gustav Munzberger, would prove crucial in piecing together the history of Treblinka decades later. The Nazis' desperation to erase their crimes was palpable, but the scale of their atrocities proved too vast to completely conceal. Despite their meticulous efforts, the Nazis could not fully erase the evidence of their crimes. When Soviet and Polish investigators arrived at the site in August 1944, they found a landscape that bore silent witness to the horrors that had transpired. The ground was littered with human bones, teeth, and personal effects of the victims. Ashes from the cremation pyres had turned large swathes of the soil a ghostly grey. Among the items discovered were eyeglasses, shoes, and prayer shawls, each a poignant reminder of the individuals who had perished there. Rachel Auerbach, a member of the Central Jewish Historical Committee who visited Treblinka in November 1945, wrote, "The ground does not want to keep its secret. It casts up the remnants of the burnt bones, teeth, decomposed documents to the surface. Everything here shouts, 'Remember!'" Auerbach's words echoed those of the biblical prophet Ezekiel, "Son of man, can these bones live?" Ezekiel 37:3. At Treblinka, it seemed, the bones themselves were crying out for justice and remembrance. In the immediate post-war years, amateur archaeologists and survivors began to uncover more evidence. Samuel Willenberg, who had escaped during the 1943 uprising, returned to Treblinka in 1959 and was shocked to find that local villagers were digging in the area, searching for valuables left behind by the victims. This grim treasure hunt inadvertently revealed more about the camp's layout and the extent of the killings. Willenberg recalled finding a child's shoe and a doll's head, haunting reminders of the youngest victims of the Holocaust. It wasn't until the late 20th and early 21st centuries that modern archaeological techniques were employed to fully uncover Treblinka's secrets. In 2007, British forensic archaeologist Caroline Sturdy-Coles led a groundbreaking project using non-invasive methods such as aerial photography ground-penetrating radar, and GPS survey to map the camp without disturbing the site, which is considered sacred ground by many. Kohl's work was particularly sensitive, given Jewish religious laws regarding the disturbance of human remains. Kohl's work revealed the foundations of the gas chambers, pinpointed the location of mass graves, and uncovered thousands of personal items belonging to the victims. Even though they tried to destroy the evidence, in actual fact, they left a hell of a lot behind, Kohl's observed. Her findings challenged the long-held belief that Treblinka had been completely destroyed, proving that physical evidence of the Nazi atrocities still existed beneath the surface. Among her discoveries were the foundations of the camp's gas chambers, which measured 8 meters by 4 meters, dimensions that matched survivors' testimonies. One of the most poignant discoveries was a Nazi Kraftfahrzeugschein, vehicle registration plaque, found in the area of the gas chambers. This seemingly mundane object served as a chilling reminder of the bureaucratic efficiency with which the Nazis carried out their murderous campaign. It was a stark illustration of what Hannah Arendt famously termed the banality of evil, the way in which the most horrific acts could be carried out through ordinary administrative processes. The archaeological work has also yielded poignant personal artifacts. In 2019, researchers uncovered a pendant bearing the inscription Frankfurt AM and the date March 3, 29, likely a birthday gift. This tiny object, lost in the chaos of the camp, serves as a haunting reminder of the individual lives destroyed at Treblinka. As Israeli historian Yitzhak Arad, himself a Holocaust survivor, noted, each item tells a story, and together they tell the story of Treblinka. In 2014, further excavations led by Polish archaeologist Wojciech Mazurek uncovered the foundations of the camp's reception area, where victims were forced to undress before being led to the gas chambers. These discoveries provided crucial physical evidence to corroborate survivors' testimonies and historical documents. Mazurek's team also found numerous personal items, including a silver medallion with the inscription, "To my dear daughter from Father Jacob, 1937. Such finds humanized the victims, reminding us that each of the hundreds of thousands who perished at Treblinka was an individual with a life, a family, and a story. The ongoing archaeological work at Treblinka continues to yield new insights into the camp's operation and the Nazis' attempts to conceal their crimes. Each artifact unearthed, each layer of soil analyzed, adds to our understanding of this dark chapter in human history. In 2019, researchers using LIDAR technology created a detailed 3D map of the Treblinka site, revealing subtle changes in the landscape that corresponded to known camp structures and mass graves. As Yitzhak Arad, historian and Treblinka survivor, wrote, "The earth is the last witness." Echoes of Treblinka, justice, memory, and the triumph of the human spirit. In the aftermath of World War II, as the full extent of Nazi atrocities came to light, the world grappled with an urgent question: how to bring the perpetrators of such unspeakable crimes to justice. The pursuit of justice for Treblinka's victims would span continents and decades, leaving an indelible mark on international law and collective memory. As Winston Churchill once said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." The trials and memorialization of Treblinka would serve as a crucial lesson for future generations. One of the most significant trials related to Treblinka was that of Franz Stangl, the camp's commandant from September 1942 to August 1943. Stangl, who had fled to Brazil after the war, was finally captured in Sao Paulo on February 28, 1967, thanks to the tireless efforts of Nazi hunter Simon Wiesenthal. The capture itself was dramatic. Stangl was arrested at his workplace, an automobile factory, where he had been living under his own name. This brazen lack of concealment spoke volumes about the confidence with which many Nazi war criminals had evaded justice. Extradited to West Germany, Stangl faced a grueling trial in Düsseldorf. The proceedings, which began on May 13, 1970, lasted nearly a year and featured testimony from 85 witnesses, including former SS men and Treblinka survivors. Among those who testified was Samuel Willenberg, one of the few survivors of the Treblinka Uprising. Willenberg's harrowing account of life and death in the camp provided crucial evidence against Stangl. He described in vivid detail the reception area where new arrivals were stripped of their belongings and dignity, the tube, a fenced pathway that led to the gas chambers, and the constant smell of burning flesh that permeated the camp. On December 22, 1970, Stangl was found guilty of the mass murder of at least 400,000 Jews and sentenced to life imprisonment. He died of heart failure in prison just 6 months later, on June 28, 1971, having uttered a chilling confession to journalist Gitta Sereni. "My conscience tells me that I should never have taken on that duty." Stangl's trial was not an isolated event. Other Treblinka guards and officers faced justice in various courts. Kurt Franz, known as Lalka, Doll, for his boyish looks and sadistic cruelty, was sentenced to life imprisonment in 1965. Franz was notorious for setting his dog, Barry, on prisoners and for his hobby of shooting inmates for sport. Gustav Munzberger, who had operated the gas chambers, received 12 years in prison. In a particularly poignant moment during Munzberger's trial, a survivor described how he had seen the defendant toss a baby into the gas chamber. These trials, while unable to fully address the magnitude of the crimes committed, played a crucial role in establishing historical record and providing some measure of closure for survivors and victims' families. The testimonies of survivors like Willenberg were instrumental not only in securing convictions, but also in preserving the memory of Treblinka for future generations. Willenberg, who escaped during the August 2, 1943 uprising, dedicated his life to bearing witness. He once said, "I live two lives. One is here and now, and the other is what happened there. It never leaves me." His sculptures, depicting scenes from the camp, serve as powerful visual testimonies to the horrors he witnessed and the courage of those who resisted. One particularly moving piece shows a group of naked women and children walking towards the gas chambers, their faces a mix of confusion and terror. Another depicts the chaos of the uprising, with prisoners desperately scaling the camp's fences. Willenberg's art became a form of testimony that transcended language barriers, allowing people around the world to glimpse the unspeakable reality of Treblinka. As legal proceedings unfolded, efforts were also underway to memorialize the site of Treblinka itself. In 1964, a striking monument designed by Polish sculptor Franciszek Duzenko and architect Adam Haupt was unveiled at the former camp. The memorial features 17,000 jagged stones, reminiscent of a Jewish cemetery, symbolizing the communities destroyed in the Holocaust. Each stone bears the name of a town or village whose Jewish population was decimated at Treblinka. The stones vary in size, with larger ones representing bigger communities. Warsaw, for instance, is represented by a massive stone, a stark reminder of the 300,000 Jews deported from the Warsaw ghetto to Treblinka. At the center stands a large stone monument, cracked down the middle, representing the broken lives and shattered world left in the wake of the Nazi genocide. Surrounding this central monument are large blocks of stone, melted and blackened, evoking the cremation pits where bodies were burned in a futile attempt to erase evidence of the crimes. The entrance to the memorial is marked by large concrete blocks, representing the railroad ties of the tracks that brought countless victims to their deaths. This powerful visual metaphor serves as a stark reminder of the industrial scale of murder carried out at Treblinka. The memorial also includes a symbolic cattle car, a replica of the train cars used to transport victims to the camp. Visitors can walk through this car, experiencing a fraction of the terror and claustrophobia that the deportees must have felt. The memorial site plays a crucial role in Holocaust education, offering visitors a tangible connection to the past. Each year, thousands of people, including students, educators, and dignitaries, visit Treblinka to pay their respects and learn from this dark chapter of history. In recent years, innovative educational programs have been developed around the site. For instance, the Names Not Numbers project encourages students to research individual victims and create personalized memorial stones, adding a deeply personal dimension to the vast tragedy. As we delve into the depths of history, Treblinka's haunting legacy lingers like a somber whisper on the wind. From August 1942 to October 1943, this factory of death claimed nearly 900,000 lives, each one a world entire. Let us heed the words of Samuel Willenberg himself, who said, "I live two lives. One is here and now, and the other is what happened there. It never leaves me." His testimony serves as a bridge between past and present, urging us never to forget the horrors of Treblinka. As we bid farewell, let us carry forward the memory of Treblinka not as a burden, but as a beacon guiding us towards a more compassionate and just world. For in remembering, we honor those lost and reaffirm our commitment to the sanctity of human life. This is where our journey ends, but the echoes of Treblinka continue to resonate through time, challenging us to be vigilant, to be kind, and above all, to never forget.